There is something that the most powerful governments in the world know about keeping control, that they never teach in school, never discuss in public, and almost never allow anyone outside their inner circle to understand. And today, I am going to break that silence completely, because the poverty you see across entire continents is not an accident. It was engineered, designed, maintained, and protected by a system so sophisticated that most people never even see it working on them. Thomas Sankara saw it, and they killed him for it. He was 33 years old when he took power in a small, landlocked nation in West Africa, and from the moment he sat in that chair, he understood something that most leaders spend their entire careers pretending not to know, that the debt his country owed to foreign institutions was not a loan, it was a leash, that the foreign aid pouring into his borders was not generosity, it was a chain, that every agreement signed with wealthy nations came with invisible handcuffs attached, and he refused to wear them. Let me take you back to 1983. The world was locked in a Cold War between two superpowers, and while everyone was watching that battle, a quieter war was being fought across the developing world, a war not with guns first, but with documents, with interest rates, with economic conditions written in fine print. Powerful countries had discovered something extraordinary, that you do not need to colonize a nation with soldiers if you can colonize it with debt. The system worked like this. A developing country would face a crisis, a drought, a drop in commodity prices, a budget shortfall, and immediately two institutions would appear at the door like helpful neighbors, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. They would offer loans, but the loans came with conditions, conditions called structural adjustment programs, and those conditions were the real weapon. The conditions required the government to cut spending on education, cut spending on healthcare, privatize state owned industries, remove subsidies on food and fuel, open the economy to foreign competition, and reduce the power of the government to protect its own people. The language was sophisticated. They called it fiscal discipline, they called it economic reform, they called it modernization. But what it actually did was dismantle every tool a poor nation might use to build itself up, and it handed the keys to foreign corporations and creditors. Thomas Sankara read these documents, he studied them, he understood them at a level most leaders refused to, and he stood before the African heads of state and said something that powerful people around the world never forgave him for saying. He said that the debt was a carefully managed reconquest of Africa, that Africa was made to borrow money to pay for things that African countries had the resources to build themselves, that the interest on the debt was eating alive every school, every hospital, every road that his people needed. He called the debt a weapon, and he was right. But Sankara did not just talk. That was what made him truly dangerous to the powerful. He acted. He launched a campaign to vaccinate 2.5 million children in a matter of weeks, using local resources and local health workers, not waiting for foreign aid with its attached conditions. He took land from the feudal chiefs who controlled it and redistributed it to farmers who worked it. His country went from importing food to feeding itself in just 4 years. He banned the use of government vehicles for personal trips and sold the fleet of Mercedes-Benz cars that government ministers were using, replacing them with simple, modest vehicles. He reduced his own salary to make it equal with that of a teacher. He refused to run his government on debt and instead built schools with local labor, built health clinics with local materials, and challenged his people to believe in themselves rather than in foreign saviors. He told his people that imperialism had not ended, it had simply changed its clothes. It no longer came wearing a colonial uniform with a gun. It came wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase full of loan agreements, and the most terrifying part was that it came with a smile offering to help. The powerful nations that ran the debt system watched Sankara with growing alarm because he was proving something they could not afford the rest of the world to see proven. He was proving that a poor nation could develop itself without their money, without their conditions, without their control. And if other nations saw that and believed it, the entire architecture of economic domination would begin to crack. On October 15th, 1987, Thomas Sankara was assassinated. He was 37 years old. The men who pulled the triggers were his own colleagues. But the question that historians and intelligence analysts have asked for decades is who gave the order and who benefited. His successor immediately reversed his policies, took on foreign debt, invited back the foreign institutions, and cut the programs that were lifting his people. The cycle of dependency resumed exactly where it had been interrupted. This is the pattern that repeats across the world and continues today. Any leader who genuinely attempts to break the debt chain, who refuses foreign control of their resources, who builds local capacity that threatens the dependency model, faces a predictable sequence of events. First comes economic pressure, their currency is attacked, their credit rating is downgraded, their access to international markets is restricted, then comes political pressure, opposition movements are funded and amplified, media narratives are shaped to paint the leader as unstable or corrupt. Then, if none of that works, comes the final option, the one they used on Sankara. The books that document this system exist. John Perkins wrote about it in Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He described how his job was to convince leaders of developing nations to take on massive loans for infrastructure projects that would not actually develop their people, but would create permanent debt dependency and open their resources to foreign extraction. If the economic hitman failed, he said the jackals were sent, and if the jackals failed, the military was used. This is not conspiracy. This is documented testimony from someone who worked inside the system. And here is what you must understand about your own life. This same mechanism operates at every level of human power. The indebted individual, like the indebted nation, loses freedom to choose. The person buried in loans they cannot repay must keep working for whoever holds their debt. They cannot say no to bad working conditions. They cannot take risks to build something of their own. They cannot walk away from exploitation because the debt will follow them. The condition that the debt system imposes on nations, the demand to privatize, to reduce your own protective capacity, to open yourself to exploitation, mirrors what financial predators do to individuals. They find you in a moment of crisis. They offer you relief. They attach conditions that seem small, and slowly over years, those conditions reshape your entire life to serve their interests, not yours. So what must you do with this knowledge? First, understand that debt is not neutral. Every debt has a power dynamic embedded in it. Every loan comes with a relationship, and you must always ask who controls that relationship. Second, build local before borrowing foreign. Whether you are a nation or a household, the capacity you build with your own hands and your own people cannot be repossessed. Third, learn to recognize the benevolent predator, the one who arrives in your crisis with a smile and a solution, because the most dangerous chains are the ones that feel like gifts when they first go around your wrists. Fourth, tell the story. The reason Sankara died is because knowledge like his spreads, and when enough people understand the mechanism loses its power to operate invisibly. Share what you know, name what you see, refuse to let the pattern remain hidden. Thomas Sankara was murdered because he made the invisible visible, because he translated the language of economic domination into words that ordinary farmers and mothers and teachers could understand. And when ordinary people understand power, power has to find a new hiding place. The most dangerous weapon any oppressed person can pick up is not a gun, it is an accurate understanding of exactly how they are being controlled. Follow Dr. Shema for more secrets that powerful people do not want you to know every single day.